Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sivam Velayudam, and welcome to Open Up, our live talk show. I am the founder and the president at Voice of Men 360. Voice of Men 360 is a non-profit organization founded in 2020 and is based in Toronto, Canada. Voice of Men 360 was born out of seeing a tremendous need and stepping up to provide services to help, support, and overcome men and boys' life challenges. We are part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day has been serving for over 21 years, and so far 90 countries around the world joined together and doing various activities regularly. IMD follows 6 pillars, which is the overall the well-being of boys and men. We follow in the same 4 steps. Why open up? Because we men do not open our hearts and are willing to share our matters with anyone. When we keep our emotional challenges within ourselves for a longer time, at some points it will explode and it will affect our health conditions in many ways. That is why we want to create an open space and allow an individual to share their life journey through our platform. We aim to create awareness, the life challenges, struggles, overcomes, ups and downs that our boys and men go through in their lives. There are no limitations with the gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups with sharing your life journey. All walks of life can participate. Our goal is to make a positive impact on someone's life through this program. Open Up is on Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Regularly, we do it at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We bring an individual to each show and let them share their life experience with you. Before I introduce our special guest for today, I would like to go through our disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith toward peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers, do not represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness to the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you that contact a medical professional immediately. If you have any questions or concerns about today's episode or Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. Today we have a special guest, J. Rothman. He is our special guest today. He's a two-time number one best international author, 2021 top 15 coach in Northern Arizona, blogger, inspirational speaker, web TV podcast, executive producer, and certified international transformational life, health and wellness coach who specializes in creating tangible healing experiences designed to speak to the heart of your heart, to touch the soul of your soul, and to help you make that pivotal shift from surviving to thriving. With clients in spanning the globe, from North and South America to Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, Jay is the most passionate about sharing his own hard-won enlightenments on how to rewire your innermost thoughts about yourself, a technique known as biohacking the mind, so that you can finally stop wasting precious time rehashing, replaying, and repeating former wounding and live the forward moving, infinitely creative a life that you were intended to live from center with intention, connected, contented, and with ease. Jay's focus when leading a workshop, hike and heal experience, or facilitating on one client's is the process of coming home to return to love. Thank you, Jay, for joining today with such a short notice, very short notice. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you. And one of the things I've learned is when I'm invited to participate, I don't say no. I show up. So thank you for inviting me, and I'm grateful that I was able to make it, that I was available. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love to hear, we're going to talk about a lot of things today. But let's start with the midlife crisis you come across. Um, can you take us back to those moments? How can you overcome? How did you overcome things like that? Can you share those moments, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is. I always love to speak, especially to men. Um, I love the work you're doing today and your vision of reaching and touching men that are seeking answers in their own life to improve an aspect of their life, their relationships, perhaps even their health. For me, I was a typical modern man living in the US society. By the time I was in my early 40s, I had achieved significant success based on what we view success as in a modern society. I had great success in my career, and I was married, had three sons, and on paper, it looked like everything was perfect. But within myself, I was very alone, felt very isolated, and as a man, emotionally shut down. And what ended up happening was eventually the inner demons and struggles that I had not faced or not been dealing with through healthy choices, instead through addictive type of behaviors. I had picked up five addictions along the way that did not include alcohol and drugs. That was not my my go-to, but I had others. And my body eventually started to shut down. My body responded to physical health crises. And by the time I was 48, I had a heart attack, and I did not address the emotional and or mental wounds that, or shadows, as we say, that I had endured from the time I was a very young child. And so by the time I was 54, about 6 years later, I was in much more, let's say, a medical crisis and hours from death. And so began my healing journey. And for me, this time around, the healing journey was understanding that it wasn't just about losing 40 or 60 pounds, which at that point I was legally considered obese. It wasn't just about joining a gym. It wasn't just about changing my nutrition. It was about understanding that if I wanted to live and change or shift from just surviving barely to thriving in my life, I had to be willing to also look at the emotional wounds and scars, pivotal moments, experiences, traumas that I had carried into my adulthood from my younger years, and with courage and surrender, be willing to honestly face all of my shadows and face them in a way that was very healing for myself. And so began my healing journey. That's the highlights of it without going too much deeper in this moment. That's what brought me to that defining moment, Savam, when I knew that for me as a man, it was do or die. I knew that if I didn't take action, massive action to save my life and not rely on Western medicine and pharmaceuticals to quote unquote save my life, that I had less than a year to live. And so I embraced it. I embraced the journey, as some may refer to it. And the journey for me was the journey about coming home. And through the process of coming home, I began to understand that it was about coming home to myself, coming home to not the home of the four walls that I had lived in, but the home within myself, to do some massive healing, massive forgiveness of self and of others.
Um, I want to ask you something here. It was very touching moments. It's a self-realization, and also the healing part, the healing process. Is it very common, Jay? You know, if you take a look at many people, they do have sometimes extreme stories or situations. Is it very common that they have to come across the midlife crisis, though?
That's a beautiful question, and I will share that I have witnessed a few men in my life that didn't have to hit a rock bottom where their health was affected, but they were able to just they were I'd say they were in a space where they recognized that the choices that they were making in their life and or in their, let's say, relationships was impacting the quality of their life. And so they themselves have been able to pivot or shift and have the courage to make massive changes without hitting some type of massive crisis, if I may refer to it as that. But for me, that wasn't my story. And it's not the story of many men that I have met, that I work with, that I coach in my career today. It for many of us, it comes down to we have to hit some level of what I call threshold of pain. And that threshold for pain is different for all of us. And so some of us don't have to hit that deep level of bottom to, let's say, wake up. And even then, even when we do hit a level of bottom, for some of us, we don't know where to turn. We don't know where to go. We don't have a blueprint, let's say, for success to know how to navigate and go through the process of what I love to refer to as rebirthing. For me, I had to be willing to allow myself to die. The man I had become was the man that I hated. I hated every aspect of myself. And I knew that there wasn't a thing about me that I was at peace with. But I also had this new clarity. And that clarity was that although I knew who I had become, I had lost who I was, the authentic part of myself. I had detached from what some refer to as my heart or soul space. And so for me, the process of coming home was about rebirthing so I could get to know who I am and every aspect of myself that I had run away from as an adult, successful, very successful man in corporate America.
Um, Absolutely. You touched a couple of points very deeply. Um, but I just want to go back and then pick one thing. When you say a rebirth or regained or even lost one person and then became another person. But having said that, going back to your healing process, it is, isn't it a journey that, we are going to, we went to a one place and then we got experience and then we are moving to a next place. So you cannot really lost or you cannot really, you know, erase from that, from your memory. It is always there, but you are become a new man. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful statement you just shared. And I'd say the simplest way to break it down for you is that it's that we don't deny any of our past. We don't run from it. We don't hide from it. We don't want to numb out from it anymore. It's it's not that we deny that those things happened or the choices we made that for men, for me at least, there was guilt and shame around many choices that I made that were hurtful not only to myself but to people I cared most about. But it's changing our relationship with those things that happen. It's not denying them. It's changing our relationship with those things that happened. And part of that for me was acceptance that I had to go through all of that to come out on the other side. It's the evolvement. It's around forgiveness. It's around acceptance, and it's around understanding that we're not when we're celebrating victories, when we're winning, we're in what I refer to as egoic or ego space. We're just celebrating. We learn and grow who we are, and we learn and grow who we want to authentically be, which is our true self, when we face our own what I call shadows or inner demons as men and women, not just men. And so for me, it was many times what our biggest obstacle is fear. We fear the unknown. We fear the unknown of what are we going to discover about ourselves? What are we going to maybe even recall that had some suppressed memories around it? And and what I was willing to embrace is that no matter what I uncovered, no matter what I faced, I knew that I was going to be okay. I knew that as a man, I was ready to show up and I was ready to grow up. And through that process, well, the rest was history. It was painful. It was no doubt that one of the first things I had to be willing to do was give myself permission to cry and be at peace with that as a man. Because if you were anything like I was growing up in a small state called New York, of the U.S. of A. I got the message early on that real boys don't cry. It was time to man up and tough up and do all those things even as a young teenager. And for me, part of the process of coming home was giving myself permission to embrace all parts of myself, the parts that were scared, the parts that were fearful, the parts that didn't know, and be willing to just learn how to feel safe enough to express myself and pick up some tools along the way.
Absolutely. It's beautifully explained. I love that coming home. It's really coming home. Absolutely, yeah. Because when we look at from the soul point of view, it's absolutely coming home. I think there are a couple of things that you said. Sometimes, or many times, many people they are struggling, or they do face some kind of struggles with denial or accepting, or even self realization. Some people out of those crowd, somehow they come back with more power, more energy, you know, and they do so much better than before. So, uh, what do you say to those people who are not willing to accept it, or realizing, or you know, living in the denial situations or moments?
Then they're not ready. They haven't hit their rock bottom. They haven't hit that threshold for pain. If you're even when I get approached by men and women to facilitate one-on-one work with them, to guide them, to facilitate their process of coming home, to return to love. And returning to love is initially it's about self-love that will lead to being able to embrace love of others in a much more healthier way, with less of an attachment and more of a connection to others. But the answer is that even when we think we may be ready, we're not. Sometimes our why, WHY, if it's not at a 9 or 10, you're probably not ready. You have to spend some more time experimenting with pain in order to reach that threshold where you go, I am done. I surrender. Show me, tell me, guide me. What do I need to do to save my own life, to save my relationship, so that I'm no longer living in pain. Because you see, we have a choice in life, Savam. We can either live in pain or we can feel the pain. When we are willing to feel the pain, we can reveal the pain and we can then heal. It's a beautiful process. It sounds daunting. It can sound overwhelming if you're listening to me for the first time. But I can tell you, as a man, I embraced the process. And although it was, it was kind of like there were highs and lows, there were pivots, there were, one step forward, two step backwards kind of thing. But through the process of embracing um, my truths and embracing all of the concepts around forgiveness, around learning how to take care of myself, learning what self-care, truly the essence of self-care is about, facing the demons and no longer willing to live in the what I call the state of egoic, where we want to minimize or deny that the things that we've either chosen to do or the experiences we've had as men, as teenagers, and as younger boys ourselves. Um, Once we have hit that point where we're willing to take whatever steps are needed to feel better about who we are and pivot and change the trajectory of our life, we're not ready.
Absolutely. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, everything starts the inner church or inner calling. And also, um, the one word I like that I love that surrender yourself. Otherwise, you cannot really start to see something different or even healing process too. But yeah, I mean, everything. Did you have those moments whenever even though you don't have it over the period like every day or anytime soon, but you know here and there in a church, you know what, this is not my life, something else is waiting for me, or something, you are not happy even though you are kind of like a look like a perfect on the outside, but inner world you are not perfect, so you are searching for something else. Is that right?
Well, there's a lot there that you shared. I could tell you that I didn't have church in my life. When I hit my rock bottom and I was literally in a hospital and I was from death, my body was in shutdown mode. Up until that point, I had left my faith when I was about 14. So I always referred to myself more as a atheist individual. Not that I am a big believer in labels, but for me, my adulthood was about I was very, very controlling, self-willed individual, and I didn't really have a relationship with anything or anybody outside of myself, that I looked to for inspiration or hope or guidance. I just didn't have any type of relationship with a power greater than myself, that some refer to as God. Um, but I can tell you that early on in my healing journey, I had what some refer to as many spiritual awakenings as I spent a week at Cedar Sinai Medical Center in Beverly Hills, California. And during that process, I began, the process began. And I, I know that for me at least, I don't think I'd be alive today if I hadn't had that spiritual awakening and began to embrace the idea and creating a relationship with faith over fear. And for me, faith is about having a direct relationship with God. And for me, I don't have to go to a building like a church building or any other building to have a conversation with God or to have a relationship with God. For me, God is within me. For me, God is everywhere I look, everywhere I turn. It's not just in a building where I go listen to a preacher or a pastor talk once a week about what we can do to be better human beings. For me, the relationship is within, and how I access and how I negotiate and how I have a relationship and how I pray is through the work, the self-care that I do on a day-to-day basis, the commitment that I make to myself through a process that I refer to as creating non-negotiables for myself.
Absolutely. I like that because whatever or the power or the energy or whatever people call, everything inside of us. So why we had to go out and then seek for support or help. I mean, asking for support or help, that's a different thing. But always look for, somebody is going to help us or support us or listen to other things. But everything is within ourselves. I come across with one gentleman. His name is, what do you call, Dr. D. Martini. And after he read probably 25,000 or 33,000 books, and then did a research about over 200 religions, spiritual around the world, just simply said, you know what, we are here to help each other. Whatever happens. So that's what it is. Just changing the direction. So let's talk about speaking at this platform, especially men's. Let's talk about the father and son relationship. So what was the inspiration? What did you learn from him? Just to share some of the memories that you can remember.
Yeah, this is one of those areas where it's really, for me personally. My dad, my dad transitioned about 5.5 years ago, and I loved my dad, but I never understood my dad. I never felt like um, there were parts of my dad I didn't know, and I definitely had um, a closer relationship with my mom than my dad. And so, what I learned from my dad was he was a very hard worker. He was committed to his career. Um, he was married to my mom until he passed. So, he showed me commitment in relationships, but he was, again, this is just my perspective. My sister may have a different memory of my father, as does my mom, who still is alive. But for me personally, I always felt distant from my dad. Um, I never felt, I mean, there were periods, there were windows. I think in my teenage years, the closest I felt to my dad was actually when I picked up racquetball, the sport, with my dad. And we'd get together and, play, I think, once a week on average racquetball. That was probably, as a teenager, the one place where I felt connected to my dad, in a racquetball court. But as far as my dad and I ever having deep, intimate conversations about life that touched me, let's say at my heart space, I didn't have that. That wasn't the relationship I had with my father. And my dad, in fact, was a very strict disciplinarian and demanded that from myself as well as my sister. And, it was complicated. Even in that aspect, when I became a parent, I went the other way because I didn't want my children to have that same experience around fear. I was very fearful of my father as far as the discipline. So was it ideal for me as a son growing up? No. Do I wish my dad um, was able to show up differently for me? Yes. But I can't change that. What I do is I'm able to accept and love my dad today in a way that I wasn't able to as a younger man. I grew up and I had a lot of anger and resentments towards my dad because I felt like I missed out on a relationship I could have had. But, there's judgment around that. And my dad did the best he could. I love my dad. I forgive my dad. And I understand that, my dad showed up the only way he knew how. And that was his choice. That was his choice. He chose not to seek help, not to do some healing around his own childhood experiences. And I remember my dad saying, I was a young kid. I remember my mom encouraging my dad, why don't you go for some help? Why don't you, see a therapist or see a counselor? And this was in the 70s. This is a long time ago. And I remember this as a child. My dad said, I don't want to go for help because I don't want to end up hating my mom or dad because I know how therapy works. You end up blaming your parents for all your woes. And so that was a choice that he made. And I do think it impacted my relationship with my father. But most importantly, the relationship that it impacted the most was the relationship he had with himself. And for me, I accept that, but it's sad. It's sad because my dad's story is many men's story. Many men are fearful of seeking help, therapy, if you want to call it that. I'm not a big fan for me personally. I did 21 years of in and out of therapy with men and women, with professionals at all the different levels. And I never got my answers. I never found healing in a talk therapy. And so it's very different type of work than what I do today when I work with my clients. It's not about talk therapy. It's about connecting at the soul level, so that we are able to do some massive work together to guide my clients back home to return to love.
Um, Absolutely. I mean, some of you guys, some of us, we do have a different experience. Everybody has a different experience, even fathers. I lost my father when I was 1.5 years old.
Mm.
Um, I never had a chance to see his face, right? Even I cannot remember. So I saw only one picture. But the thing is that even when we go back their childhood, even their the grandparents, grandpa, so we don't know. Most of us, we blame fathers and grandfather and their grandfathers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we don't really look into deeper in their relationship or in their environment, what they have gone through, in their own life. So we most of the times we don't look at that side. So thank you actually being open and sharing those situations. Many of us can connect. It's not a military discipline, but most of us at home, we do have this kind of disciplined dads. So in many cases, we cannot blame them. Sometimes we blame in a different way. It's kind of like escaping. Um,
It's beautiful what you just shared, and I do want to piggyback that I did the same thing. When I wasn't blaming my father, I was blaming my mom for all my woes. I was always blaming someone outside of myself. And what that did was it created the perfect storm because I was living in what I refer to as inner bondage. I was an angry man. I did my best to control it. I didn't rage that often, but if when I was pushed to frustration beyond, to that point of explosion, I would just express myself in a very toxic way. But the person I hurt the most was myself. And for me, the healing process was really about understanding that it was time for me to stop blaming others and take accountability and responsibility for my own happiness or unhappiness. And that for me was the first step to what I refer to as inner freedom. When I was finally ready to stop blaming and pointing a finger at my dad or pointing a finger at my mom, today pointing a finger at my ex-wife who we spent 30 years in a marriage together, it was time for me to show up and grow up and take accountability for my own life and do the work, as I refer to it, to heal those wounds so that I no longer have to live in what I refer to as those inner shackles or bondage attached to the past experiences. I wanted freedom around that. And it's possible to gain it because that's the life I live today.
Um, Thank you. Actually, going back and sharing those moments, because whoever is watching, they can really connect with those situations and learning. Maybe you can just change your thinking pattern. Maybe it will help, to understand. But the healing process that you went, it's really amazing. Um,
Thank you.
so let's talk about the book and the show that you guys are doing. Let's talk about the books that you started. How did you come? Why did you want to write a book, though?
What happened for me was I decided early on in my journey of coming home to myself that I wasn't alone. I knew that millions and millions of men, as well as women, but especially men, were right where I was. And I was 54 years old when I began to surrender. And through that process, I realized I wasn't alone. And so many men and women were living in pain. And I wanted to share with them my story of inspiration, my story of hope. And for me, the acronym for hope is healing our perspective every day. And I began to understand that it was my mind that was the sickest of them all, more so than any other part of my body. It was my mind, it was my thoughts, it was the reality that I had created for myself through my thoughts and my emotions that had created the perfect storm. And I decided that I didn't want to hide and live in isolation anymore, but I wanted to share my story to hopefully inspire other men and women that it's possible to pivot and change the trajectory of our life. And so I began to share my story. Initially, I took up writing, journaling along the shoreline of Southern California, where I spent the first 3 years of my process. And through initially writing or journaling along the shoreline each morning, I decided to submit it and publish it for digital blogging as a professional blogger. And I started to do that. Then I started to share it out on social media. And eventually I was invited to participate. I was found by a couple of authors that had trilogies, books that they had launched prior. And I was invited to participate and share a part of my story in their book with other authors. And so that's how that happened as far as contributing to a couple of books. One was Sacred Heart Rising, and the other one was Magnetic Entrepreneur. Both of those publishers are Canadian-based publishers. But it was just part of the journey for me. It was exciting initially, but at the end of the day, publishing, being part of those books, really didn't define me and doesn't define who I am today. It was just for me. It was just part of the healing process. It At the moment, it felt really important, and it felt like it was going to be a game changer for me. But it really wasn't. It was just part of the process. It was another experience to embrace, something I had not done before, and I'm grateful that I was invited to share my stories. Um, but it didn't really impact the trajectory of my healing journey, nor those that I work with today on a day-to-day basis. It wasn't that important, is what I'm saying. A lot of us get hung up on the semantics of things that we want to do outside of ourselves, and it's less important than to put the focus back on. For me, is about being in touch with myself every day, and then sharing my experience with others that has impacted my own life.
Absolutely. I think it's one way is looking at, of course, when we have so much stories or have some kind of experiences that you want to share with the other people, you want to share with the world. So somewhere somehow someone get can connect and get healed somehow. We don't know, right? Because at least one story or one page, one word can inspire from your book. So, but what I want to recognize it, I really want to appreciate that the willingness that you took and share. You wanted to write a book and willing to help others. Directly or indirectly, it can
Yeah.
impact. You know what I
What it comes down to, Savam, is I believe that we're only as sick as our secrets. I'm going to repeat that. We're only as sick as our secrets. And so for me, um, I was ready to just to disclose my true story and the journey of being near death and what it took to awaken and come home. And for me, the passion project that I do have, you mentioned, is I decided about a year before I actually launched, I had this vision of launching a podcast, and this is back in 2017. And I launched in 2018. It was a podcast that has evolved into my passion project today, which is called Real Men, Real Talk Live. And for me today, it's a podcast, it's a talk show where I have three other co-hosts that join me on a weekly basis, all men. And if you are a man that's part of your program on social media, I do share it into Voice of Men 360. Each week, Thursday nights, we come in live, and each week we pick another topic, and it's not rehearsed. We come in the way you and I are today, unedited, and we just pick a topic and we deep dive into that specific topic. A couple of weeks ago, our topic was all about from boys to men, what it takes to grow up and how to evolve. Each week is a different topic. Sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cry on air, sometimes we hold space, sometimes we have massive breakthroughs for in our own healing journey. But it's a beautiful show of healing for men and women. What's interesting is, as much as we launched the show to reach men, more than our audience, our viewership, which we are averaging about 38,000 people a week, is the split is for every man, there's two women that show up and watch the show. So we're reaching more women. More women are tuning in than men are today, but but we accept that and we love that, because what we also know is that for every woman that watches the show, they probably have a brother, they may have a father, they may have a significant relationship that they're engaged or involved in. And so we know that we are maybe indirectly reaching and touching other men that are ready to embrace life in a different way than perhaps the way we have shown up for ourselves, just surviving, and that we can find infinite possibilities in our own life and in our own relationships when we just have the courage to show up.
Absolutely, I love that. I like that. I like that because see, not only you guys sharing or even healing yourself, but also the other people, especially the women. See, when we talk about men's issues, we cannot just talk about or men just can talk about men's issues. So women has to be in the have to be in the conversation though. So
Great.
they should listen, or they should understand, or they should see it, understand from different perspective, from a different point of view. So that can lead um, to the next level, which they can share with their partners or brother or father or somebody else, even friend.
Exactly.
So exactly. So I really like that. I appreciate that, because even I can share one thing that see, people do have friends or friend circle. Let's say on Facebook, we have over 5,000 or nearly 5,000 people, but we don't know all of them, right? But my search, the way I do it, it's very I don't say I won't say different, but after I started this organization and started my inner church and everything, I started to connect with a lot of people, right? So that's the way I want to connect with each and everyone as much as possible. So that's why I connected with Jay. Somehow there's no other way around. So I try to connect at least 5 or 10 people every day. You know,
I
so
love that. I love that. That's what I call the ripple effect,
exactly.
And you know what's interesting about what we have learned, we just wrapped up our 96th episode. So we're just one episode behind you and in your podcast here. Congratulations as you approach 100. But when we launched the podcast, our intention for the show was to impact other people's lives in their healing journey. But what we didn't know was that we would also impact our own. We find that many times there's healing that takes place, spontaneous healing that takes place in the podcast between all four of us men. And that's a gift that we didn't anticipate receiving, experiencing. Um, but it's powerful because through that process of us having a spontaneous awakening or epiphany or clarity in a moment, um, our viewers are able to see as men how we are able to hold space for each other. You see, we don't show up as teachers. We're not here to teach anybody anything. We show up as real men having real conversations about what we are facing or going through, the victories, the wins, the losses, the pain, the breakups of relationships, the renewals of relationships, new relationships, turning down career jobs, turning down income because it's not aligned with who we are today. There's every aspect of life that we show up each week, we experience, we share. And even when one of the guys shows up and says, I really don't feel like talking about what's going on, somehow we end up going there with honor and respect, and we hold space for one another. And it's a beautiful talk show. We recently got picked up by Roku TV and Amazon Fire TV through a new channel called Your Health Network that was started by Charles Maddox, and so we're continuing to expand and grow. But the show is really not about a show. It's about the message, and the message is about that we have infinite possibilities as men and women when we are willing to, as I have shared already in this interview, when we're ready to just really embrace the who we truly are, and get to know who we are, and be willing to honor who we are, and eventually come home to love ourselves.
Just a quick question, Jay. How long that show?
It we used to sometimes stretch it to about an hour and a half, and it was suggested to us by a couple of people in the industry, that we needed to trim it down to an hour. And for us, initially, it felt really uncomfortable because there was so much to share in any given topic. But we've dialed it down to an hour show now, which is more tolerable for most viewers to invest an hour in their life in one hour of the week to pick up some tips, tricks, and tools on how to improve an aspect of their life. And so, yeah, we brought it back to an hour now, and we're at peace with it. It's a tighter show. It is I don't think we are lacking content. We just spend less time kind of going off on tangents and just really honing in on the show topic. So it's tighter, it's cleaner, and I believe it is in fact more impactful today.
Absolutely. Let's. The reason why I was asking is that when we go to movie, maybe 90 minutes or maybe more than that, we spend for learning nothing many times,
Uh-huh.
right? But if the message is there, of course, the message is important. Then people, it doesn't matter 1 hour or 2 hours, they're going to listen. But 1 hour is very ideal, and the topic is very important. Especially, I'm surprised, and then I am also happy to hear there are more women listening to your podcast, and then they are, of course, they will be sharing, or they are sharing in some ways, but
Yeah.
maybe you don't know, or we don't know, right? uh,
You know what comes from that is that I think this is my impression from our viewership is that the women the women participate because they want to understand the men in their lives. They want to be able to get in. They want to understand the men that they are confused by how we show up as men. And and if they're not in a relationship, in an intimate relationship with a man, they're coming to us to learn how to show up in their authentic way, in a healthier way, to create a healthier relationship between themselves and the men in their life, whether it be, again, an intimate relationship, a relationship with a father, relationship with a male friend, a relationship with a brother, even.
yes, absolutely, like everybody. So when man take initiatives, then it's a way of doing things differently. But when women are doing things differently, because of course they have to understand, they had to realize, they had to get to know what's going on. Otherwise, they cannot help. At least somebody has to lead that, right? So it's a beautiful to hear that at least they are willing to. The willingness is the most important thing, right? It doesn't matter how many people are watching or listening, but how many people are. The most important thing is how many people are taking into their life and then applying, or even talk to other people, you know changing their mindset or changing their thinking pattern. That's really important, let's finish it off with one question I have. Can you share any unforgettable moments, that story, that how a male's life was impacted, and how did he overcome? If you have any stories, of course, I'm pretty sure you have many stories, many
Yeah.
experiences,
Yeah, I
but
don't. Yeah, that we need another hour for that. But you know what? What came forward for me in this moment
yeah.
is, for me, a huge part of the healing, of coming home to myself, was that when I was a child, a young child in grade school, I struggled with being bullied significantly, not a few times, but pretty consistently from second through about sixth grade. And it really impacted my life. And I didn't know that. But what happened was I overcorrected. By the time my ego was developed, by probably about age 7 or so. And by the time I was a teenager, I overcorrected the steering wheel, if I may refer to it as that, and really leaned into what I refer to as my masculinity, and eventually leading to toxic masculinity. And you may be familiar with that term. But what I didn't know was that when I overcompensated, and the first time I put on that, what I call that power suit, that armor, which for me was a men's suit with a tie, I felt this false sense of strength, this false sense of empowerment. And I ran with it from the time I was about 20 and a half until I hit what I refer to as my rock bottom in my life. And what I didn't realize is that I turned my back on the other part of myself, which was the more softer, gentler side, the side that some refer to as the feminine within. And what I've learned in my own journey of coming home was that I love both parts of myself today. I love knowing when it's appropriate to show up with the masculine divine or masculine energy, but also know when it's I feel safe to express and show and share my softer side, my sensitive side, my side that allows my emotions to come through in a healthy way, to share and accept and love both parts of myself. And in doing so, there's something that I call balance. The balance is within. The balance is loving both my feminine and masculine side of myself as a man. And all of my relationships have evolved, have improved, have gotten healthier. And I love the way life can feel today as an awakened man today. And for me, that is about knowing when to show up as that strong masculine man, but also knowing that it's safe, and when it's safe to show up more in sharing more of that feminine divine within. And so for me, that's one of the biggest foundations of the healing journey. And for me, that's about no longer shutting off my emotions, shutting off and isolating and being that toxic man that doesn't show his emotions, which my understanding from most women that I have met and I have done work with and I hold space for is that's what they're lacking in their relationships with their partners, is their men are emotionally shut down and not available. And that is the greatest gift as men that we can give to our partners, to our wives, to our spouses, to our friends, to our siblings, even to our parents and to ourselves.
Um, I think in many cases for over these years, Jay, um, of course you can agree or you can correct me that it doesn't matter men or women, you know, they didn't know the other side of the coin, the men's side, whatever the shutdown system, you know what I mean, the emotional challenge that they go through. They don't know how to. I heard recently one person said, you know, men or people, most of them, we do know how to open those emotional challenges, but they don't know how to close it, how to heal properly. So I think that line is where says a lot of things. You know, we cannot blame the woman part, but at the same time that it's good to see, at least in the last couple of years, some people or a couple of people around the world started to talk about even the International Men's Day. I mean, even on November 19th, you know, there are people started to talk about it, and then nowadays it's open talk everywhere. So it's not enough, but at least we started somewhere. I really appreciate that, yeah, that what you guys are doing. The three of us or four of for you guys are doing that. You know, creating the space and making more awareness. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Um, is there anything before we close it you want to share? Last part.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do want to say that if you live in the U.S. or you have any intentions of traveling to the U.S. for vacation, I reside in a beautiful healing community today, referred to as Sedona, Arizona, where there's powerful vortexes in the Red Rock, over 200 trails, and one of my other passion projects where I spend many of my hours of the day is in nature, in the wilderness. I have launched a small business called Hike and Heal Experiences in Sedona. And if you're a man or a woman and you're planning on coming into Sedona, it's where I love to do so much of the healing work is in the wilderness. I spend anywhere from 3 to 5 hours with guests that pass through, and we deep dive into an area in your life that you're looking to heal or improve or shift or change or pivot. And it's a beautiful way to start the process, so to initiate the process of your own healing journey of coming home. I love that work. I think one of the greatest gifts that I have received in the last almost 7 years of my life is that the work I do today, I'm out of corporate America today. I had achieved above and beyond anything that I thought I would achieve in my career, but it lost its passion for me, and it really wasn't something that I was doing from my heart or soul space. And the work I do today, working with people, you notice I didn't say help people. I'm not here to help people, but the work I do is about inspiring people that we have infinite possibilities when we are ready to show up, and when we are ready to face our shadows. We have infinite possibilities to improve all aspects of our life, to shift from surviving to thriving. And for me, what it's about, it's no longer about tolerating life. It's about falling in love with our life.
Absolutely, beautifully closed. So I really want to thank, and truly I can sense that the healing part, the process, how many lives you touched so far, how many lives actually changed, made a positive impact. It's a really amazing works that you are doing. Of course, we will bring you to our the unspoken tears to next show next month. Really want to hear more about your works that you are doing. Thank you. With such a very short notice, you joined and then shared your life journey. Thank you, really. Thank
Thank
you.
you. And you're doing amazing work. Keep doing what you're doing. I have such respect and I honor you. It took courage for you to launch your nonprofit, and the work you're doing to touch lives, men's lives, as well as women's lives indirectly. I'm happy to participate and support the work you're doing in any way that I can. Thank you for inviting me, seeing me, finding me, and inviting me into your community to hopefully touch some person's life in a way that um, improves how they feel about themselves. So thank you so much for inviting me in this morning. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And also, we will work together and then we will help more people though down the
Thank you
road.
so
If,
much.
sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Have a
you.
beautiful weekend.
You too. Take care. Um, so, friends, going back to our open up show, today we had a very lovely show, the healing process, the life journey from one person. But also, when I say one person, it's not really one person because he could or he did served a lot of people um, through many lives. So, um, just have a few announcements to share with you guys. Open up on Sundays. Normally, we do host it at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And I'm happy to share that we are approaching our 100th show, which is going to be on April 3rd from 10 to 12 p.m. And we're going to bring people from different industries, let's say entertainment, sports, and acting, and anything you name it. So we will be bringing more people to that show and then ask or let them share their personal life journey, struggles, pains, and the challenges. And Willie is the Tamil Live Talk Show on Sundays, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and a monthly webinar. It's on first Saturday of every month at 10:30 a.m. 10 a.m. And we bring expertise, organizations, and discuss a particular topic each time. Monthly special show, the Unspoken Tears, second Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. The focus is domestic violence against men, bullying, male sexual abuse, traumas, porn addictions, and human trafficking. And Others circle, we want to bring individuals who have been contributing to the well-being of boys and men through writings, articles, media, and recognize them, appreciate them. Third Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. This is going to be 11 to 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And Next one, we're going to have Dave Rogers will be joining and sharing his life journey. And all our podcast, shows are on podcast, iPhone, Google Play, and Spotify, and so on. Monthly men's group meeting, only for men, by men. Every 2 weeks on Tuesdays from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. through Zoom. The next one will be on Tuesday, March 22nd. Please join through Zoom. The link is available on our Facebook page and group. And the next one is the Pass the Talking Stick, Indigenous peer-to-peer support group, fourth Friday of every month from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. through Zoom. There are no limitations with the gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups. All walks of life can participate in any of our shows. If you want to be a guest on any of our shows or willing to be part of our organization and help us directly or indirectly, please reach out to us. We would love to work with individuals, professionals, experts, community organizations, associations, corporations, government officials, and businesses. Our phone number is 437-889-83229. 439-889-8329. Email address info@voiceofmen360.org. Website www.voiceofmen360.org. Social media, you can find us on Facebook page and group. Please invite your friends also. Most of our activities are on Facebook. Other social medias are Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Voice of Men 360. And with one just quick request, a humble request, that whatever we have been discussing, whatever you have been listening to, please think about that, analyze it, and share with other people. That's the way we can make a difference. Not only it's adding value to our guest, to this show, and to this platform, but also to our community, everyone, male or female or any gender. Thank you. Thanks a lot. See you next time. Thank you.